Hello, everybody. This is Jacob Sapochnik with the Enchanting Lawyer podcast, where we interview successful attorneys, entrepreneurs, and marketing leaders who share with us their ideas and the ways to practice better and be a better professional. And today I have a very cool attorney, actually. She is very cool. Ruth Carter. She's an attorney, a professional blogger, and an author. She was named Legal Rebel by the ABA, American Bar Association Journal. And she is a specialist in flash mob law as well. And welcome, Ruth, to our show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm fabulous. How are you?
I'm doing very good. And Ruth, I was following you for a while, and you do very different things in social media, in blogging, and writing. And I introduced you briefly, but why don't you tell our audience, who many of them are attorneys, but not just attorneys, just about yourself and what brought you to where you are today?
Okay, so my name is Ruth Carter. I own Carter Law Firm in Phoenix, Arizona. My firm focuses on business contracts, intellectual property, social media law, and flash mob law. And most of what I do kind of grew out of the fact that I fell in love with flash mobs and social media and blogging when I was in law school. And that led to me doing a lot of research on the legalities of those activities. And somehow it's developed into, part of my business and writing books. And I feel really lucky. I've been able to turn things that I love into, a viable profession.
Right. And so it's funny that you mentioned, because we also have a lot of law students who listen to the show, and just people that want to get into the legal field. And you mentioned that you started really actively doing different things while in law school. And before we when I invited you on the show, I mentioned to you that I've spoken to Jason Serferap, who is a very interesting guy himself, who's been doing a lot of sponsorships in a very creative ways. And he mentioned, by the way, there was this one attorney. And she did a very cool thing where while I was in law school, she offered some sponsorship on her new blog. And I'm very curious about that story. Why don't you tell us a bit what you did back in law school?
So when Jason Serferap started his business, I Wear Your Shirt, he had this model where he would market a different company every day by wearing their shirt and putting out content about them. And people would pay for that day, and each day had a different pricing structure. And when he started, January was $1, or January 1 was $1, January 2 was $2, every day went up by $1, and December 31st was $365. Each day wasn't very expensive, but in aggregate, he made a career. And so when I was, I think, a third-year law student, I heard a podcast that Jason was on where he was talking about what he did. And I was so impressed that he just created this business from nothing and how it was so accessible. And it just got my wheels turning. And I thought, I love my blog. I don't like paying for law school. My law school tuition went up about like 32 or 33% between my first semester and my last semester of law school. And I was always unhappy about that. I think every law student is. But I thought, what if I put up this opportunity? People could sponsor a day on my blog using the same pricing structure that Jason used for my last semester. So January 1 was $1, and I offered every day for sale from January 1 through the end of the bar exam. And I asked a friend of mine, I said, what do you think about this idea? And he said, put out a blog post about it and see what happens. So that's about as much thought as I put into it. Put out the blog post, and it got picked up by the ABA Journal, by Above the Law, by about a dozen other blog posts. And this was at a time when I was happy if my blog got, double-digit readership every day. And so my blog hits went up to like 1,300 a day for a couple of days because everyone was rushing to it.
Right.
I ended up selling enough days to pay for about a third of my tuition. Some people loved it. Some people hated it. Some people were really mean to me about it because they were saying I was asking for a handout. And I was like, nope, I was like, hey, if you want to buy a day, buy a day. If you don't like it, spend your money on something else. So I didn't understand the backlash part of it. But I was inspired by Jason to
Right.
try it, and it worked out pretty well.
And what I like about it is that it was a creative idea. It's you'll be using your skills as a good writer, which obviously you are. And I think that kind of the message saying to people who are in law school or about to even young attorneys, you can't keep doing the same thing that everybody else is doing because everybody else is in law school, everybody else maybe graduated and they're looking for a job. Why would they, why would somebody want you? And I think in your case you clearly established the fact that, well, I can be creative no matter where I am, even without the bar, which I think is why it led to some of the things that you're doing right now. But I found it to be very inspiring because you can just take any silly idea and just make it into something very interesting, because people can
Exactly.
see not only the fact that you can write well, but also that you can do it consistently, and that it can show you a lot of things about you as an attorney or somebody that can be creative. So that's great. And so when you finished law school, how did you what was the next step? So tell us a bit about what made you decide to get into that legal field.
So, finished law school, took the bar exam, and so I finished in 2011. And so the legal industry still really hadn't rebounded completely in terms of jobs. I think my year, they said there was 45,000 graduates and only 25,000 jobs available. So jobs were hard to come by. And I knew that there were a lot of things that I wanted to do that were different than your typical first-year associate. I still wanted to be able to blog and to write and to do a lot of speaking engagements. And I knew that a lot of firms don't let their first-year associates do that. You're just trapped in a room reviewing contracts all day or whatever work they throw at you. And so... And I live in Arizona. It's very conservative around here. And anyone who reads my blog will know that I'm, well, not. So I think I was a little bit unemployable because of my aspirations and because people can see what I do and I don't apologize for it. And in terms of, I am a flash mobber, I am an outspoken blogger. And so I reached out to a business mentor friend of mine, and she said, I know you have aspirations to have your own firm of someday. Why not just do it right out of the blocks? So I actually made the commitment and the decision to go solo even before I had my bar results. So that became my next thing was, for spending 2 or 3 months just laying the groundwork so that after I got my bar license, I could open my firm.
And I think this is something that is, it's a very tough decision for many people, especially when they, spend so much money on school, trying to get, get on their own. And for you, it was a very natural decision because you knew it's going to be not easy to work for a firm anyway. But I think one of the things that I found interesting about you is the blogging was really a main source. I mean, it's still the foundation for everything that you do. And I'm looking back at what I've done when I started my own firm, even before we had, we know for our Facebook work and social media stuff. But I'm looking back, I started my firm in 2004, and back then Facebook and social media wasn't powerful, but blogging was. And so our initial rise was because of blogging as well. Writing it on a daily basis, I realized that it's really the key to get yourself out there. And I want you to tell me, first of all, what do you feel is the main value of blogging for anybody, not just lawyers?
I think blogging is a great way for people to get to know both you as a person and also what you know in terms of your knowledge base. One thing I've learned as a business owner is people hire people, not just a business. And so if they don't like you as a person, they're never going to hire you. So through my blog, people get a sense already of who I am. So there's already a rapport that's being built. They're already starting to like, me as a person, and they can see, a little bit about my personality, a little bit about my hobbies, about what's important to me. And then as an attorney, I think it's great that I can use the blog to show people what I do. There's lots, every legal website, for a law firm says our practice areas are X, Y, and Z, but they don't really demonstrate what they know. They just say, oh yeah, I do business, I do intellectual property. But with the blog, I can say, I do intellectual property, and let me show you what I know. And I do blog posts about the common questions that I get. So when people find the blog about the topic that they have a question about, they can already see, hey, this is somebody who I like as a person and already I know has a good working knowledge of the specific area that I have a question about. And so they, come to me, one, already being a good fit for the firm and confident that I can help them.
Right. Because I think that these days everybody has a website where they plaster whatever they want about how good they are and how many awards they got, and I think that especially with the changes in Google last year, where keywords and trying to game the system is no longer that easy, quality content, and I remember I was spoken to one of these SEO guys, and they're saying that really quality content is not enough; it has to be superb. Really good content that people can, it's not just for the search engines, but actually, as you write quality, unique content, people will see it, and that's really the best marketing tool right now. So knowing that it is the best way to do it, we know that it's not. There's a lot of it's like a minefield of legal issues, and I wanted to bring you back to your book. You wrote the legal side of blogging first, and the ebook, and then we have the one for attorneys in specific. So first of all, tell me, why did you write the book?
So I got into blogging during my second year of law school in 2010, and that's when I started my personal blog, undeniableruth.com. And I still have a lot of friends in the social media world who are very outspoken. And so I started wondering, okay, how much can we actually say before we're going to get in trouble? And so that led to a blog series. And then I took a course in cyberspace law where I wrote my significant paper on the legalities of having a blog. And all that kind of coalesced into my ebook, which is called The Legal Side of Blogging, How Not to Get Sued, Fired, Arrested, or Killed. And it kind of goes through all the major legal issues that come with getting a blog, whether you're using it personally or for your business. And I tried to answer the most common questions in English versus the legalese that we speak. But so that was my book I wrote for normal people, and that's on Amazon and the Kindle store. And then I approached the ABA about doing a variation of the book for lawyers, because we have issues about ethics and advertising and disclaimers and what can and can't you say. And so they accepted my proposal, and so I wrote The Legal Side of Blogging for Lawyers, which came out this past spring.
Very good. And I think this is one of those sources that people who are blogging on a regular basis really are found it to be very useful, because there's so many things that we don't know, and I heard cases where people posted an article and it came back at them 2 years later when somebody found it and said, you know what, you shouldn't have used that picture, or that's actually my content. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, first of all, we understand that the value of blogging. I mean, can you imagine an attorney right now who's starting a business that is not going to blog? I mean, is it even possible? I mean, I know many attorneys are not blogging, but to me, it doesn't make sense.
I do wonder, how are attorneys marketing themselves who are starting out, who aren't blogging, and
Right.
how are they getting their names out? I'm sure there are other ways to do it depending on your practice area.
Right.
But I think for a lot of people in a lot of, especially like metropolitan areas, the market feels like it's flooded in terms of like, especially if you're like a personal injury or a DUI or, basic criminal defense attorney, the market feels flooded. And so you have to get your name out somewhere. And so either you have to have an incredible, network of contacts who will just recommend you,
Right.
or you have to be findable, because when you have a question, unless you got a buddy who's a lawyer, probably the first thing you're going to do is jump on Google and type in your question.
Right.
So how do you make sure that your site comes up first, especially if you're just starting out versus there's a firm who's been, in business for 20 years? And, they may have incredible staff and professional bloggers who take care of all that for them. So, for me, it was a no-brainer that I knew once I had my business up and running, the next thing on my to-do list was get the website up and start blogging every week.
Right. And that's what I tell, we have a lot of questions for young attorneys, and even attorneys have been doing this for a while and they want to transition into self-employment. I tell them the first investment, just invest in a good blog. Mm-hmm. Designed properly, visually beautiful, and make sure you start doing it on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Make the commitment.
Exactly. So now that we put our mind into, okay, we need a blog and we're going to do it every 3 times a week, or I think 3 times a week should be the minimum. I mean, if you can do more, great. But what is the plan for somebody who wants to start blogging that you would recommend as far as legal wise, and also as far as kind of the state of mind of blogging as a writer?
So I think from the state of mind as a blogger, I think about your audience. That was one thing that was always told to me. Don't think of yourself, if you are a lawyer blogging for potential clients, don't write like a lawyer, write like your clients. Think about what their questions are. Think about how they talk, and use their language, not the legalese that we use every day, because they don't understand it. So I think, do that. Make your blogs, visually appealing. So always have a photo that is legal to use. Don't steal content. Don't buy content. You actually write it yourself. And one thing that I've actually started doing more and more, now that I've had my site built up enough that I get a lot of people coming to my site, is I'm checking what people are searching to find my site, and trying to be very attuned to what content is hitting with my clients, or what people are asking me about, like on Facebook, and there's my blog material.
How do you do that? How do you search for that kind of information?
So I think it's really important, if you own your own firm, that you understand how the backside of your website works. Both of my sites are run on WordPress, so it's pretty easy to learn. I think one of the best things actually I learned in law school was how to run a site, so that I didn't have to go through that learning curve as a business owner. So I know what people are searching to get to my site. I know what sites they're coming to me, to my site from, whether through a search engine or Facebook or Twitter or Reddit or whatever, or if someone's been linking to me. I like to know who's talking about me. So I can see all that. It's actually very entertaining sometimes. I have a post coming out. There's a new movie coming out this week called Sex Tape about, and so I did a blog post about because I have written about revenge porn and things like that. And so I have a lot of weird search terms that people have searched to get to my site about photos and videos that have gone online that people didn't intend to. So I did a whole post just dedicated to that. That's more for fun, but so yeah, and then I'm connected online to business groups and photography groups and other niches, and so sometimes they'll get into a thread and they'll be throwing questions back and forth or talking about something, and somebody will comment, "Hey, what does Ruth think about this?" And then that's usually when I go look at it and be like, "Okay, what are you guys talking about?" And so one was on a photographers group yesterday about what's the difference between commercial art and fine art. And I was like, maybe I should write a blog post about that. So, it's not hard if you know what to look for.
Right. And you can see the questions that people are asking, and based on that you can come up with topics. But I think one of the main points that I see people are concerned about and get into trouble are usage of pictures. And I think this is something that when we use for our blog, we have a few sites where we pay a Shutterstock and all these other ones, and we buy a package with pictures, and then but I think people just get tempted to just go on Google and look at the images and just grab a picture and I really want you to kind of give me some, first of all, what is the situation right now where people using pictures and the lawsuits and that, and how can people actually collect on that?
Yeah.
And then what would you recommend for somebody to do a strategy for picture usage?
Okay. So I think photographers are getting more and more savvy about protecting themselves and their images and being aware of when their stuff is being stolen. I've had multiple clients come to me because they got a cease and desist letter or just a bill from a photographer because they went on Google image search and used a picture that they shouldn't have used. And they come to me and they're like, "Do we have to pay this?" And sometimes I have to say, "Yeah, you're going to have to pay for this." Now we can try to negotiate it down, but no, this is a photographer who sells their work for a living, and by using it, you kind of agreed to pay their fee. So let's work this out. But I think a lot of people don't understand that just because you can find it on the internet doesn't mean you're allowed to use it. I've had my work stolen, both images and verbiage. And so it happens to everybody, including lawyers, by other lawyers, apparently, even with my situation. So how do you avoid that? A couple of ways. One, do what you do and buy the rights to photos. I have a couple of photographers whose work I really like, and they've said, hey, you can use anything off my Flickr page as long as you give an attribution, no matter what license I've put on it. So that's been great. I have 3 people I can always look to for that. And then I use a lot of Creative Commons images. So those are images people have put on the internet with a license saying, please use it as long as you follow these rules. So I always make sure I pull images that I have the right to modify so I can crop it if I need to, and the right to commercialize so I can use it on my law firm site. I don't make money directly off my blog, but because I use my blog for an ultimate commercial purpose, I need images I can use commercially. So I do that. And then if there ever is an image that I really like and it's not available under Creative Commons and I don't know the photographer, I just send them an email and say, hi, I really like this image. I would like to use it, please. And I've never had anybody say no.
Mm-hmm. They appreciate the fact that you actually came to them asking for the permission.
Exactly. And if it was somebody who said, hey, I charge, I would say, and if it's a picture I really wanted, I would say, what's your fee?
Yeah. But the fact that you actually came forward, most people will say, oh, no, just use it.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I think this is one of the most important things because, if you have a good blog and then somebody comes and say, you have to take it down, you may have to take the whole thing down because now there's a litigation and they want you to pay, and it's just, it's better to plan in advance because things may come back in a year or two because, people will find your blog and say, you know what, you did it in 2010, I want you to pay me for all these years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right?
Absolutely. And I've told people if you have not kept track of where your images came from and you know that you have been pulling images you probably shouldn't have from off of Google image search, your best bet to avoid problems, it's going to be a pain in the butt, but go back into your site, rip out every photo and start over.
Right.
In that way, you're going to protect yourself. Otherwise, when you start your blog, never use an image that you don't have permission, unless you have permission to use it.
And I would just get yourself a bunch of pictures and make a plan of what you can use and just use that. And like you said, if you find something you like, make an effort to email the source, because otherwise it's really tough.
Exactly.
So, what are some of the ethical considerations you think that bloggers, legal bloggers should consider when they post something?
Well, the first thing you got to do is go look at your state's ethical rules about advertising and blogging and see if there actually have been any opinions written about blogging specifically. Probably most states haven't, but you never know. It could be there. I think when a blog is done properly, it doesn't even qualify as advertising. Because when I think of advertising, I think of billboards and buses and, TV commercials where it's, hey, buy my service, me, buy my stuff. Very infomercially. And if your blog sounds like an infomercial, you're doing it wrong. Your blog should be about providing helpful information to your readers. And if they happen to want to call you and hire you, bonus. But it shouldn't be about, hey, hire us for this. That's not what a blog's for. But I do think every blog should have a disclaimer, either in the sidebar or somewhere that reminds readers, just because I am a lawyer, I am not your lawyer. This is only general information. If you need a lawyer, go hire somebody. I think that's important to have in there because people will assume that any blog they read applies to them. And if you're reading something that's based on a state law, and you're in California and you're reading a Kansas attorney's blog, that may not help you. And some blogs or some states require every law firm to have certain disclaimers on their site. So you got to comply with that. But thankfully there haven't been too many cases involving lawyers and ethics. And the only one I saw was one where the attorney was really doing more of a hire me type situation and doing it to promote themselves and their legal skills versus providing information. So, so far, I think, most of us are in the clear in terms of how to blog properly, but it is about, making sure you're mindful about how you're writing it and that you have all your proper disclaimers in place.
So, disclaimers, I was actually going to ask you about that. Do you think they should be customized for your blog, or you can just use something that works for most of these blogs? I mean, unless you do something very different.
I mean, I think I've looked at lots of different disclaimers, and I think it kind of depends on, who you are and the culture of your firm. I know one site I've seen, they have a whole page dedicated to their disclaimer, and it's very legalese out and very fancy and good for them. I think mine's 3 sentences that says, I am a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer. This is information, not legal advice. If you need advice, go hire somebody. Right. So I think it can, and I think it should be very simple and straightforward. I also add that disclaimer to any post I do if I do a guest post on anyone's blog, just to say, I'm happy to write this for you, but make sure you have this disclaimer so your readers understand that I'm not giving legal advice.
Right. And so, that's another interesting point, because if you're a guest blogger, then you have to make sure that the blog that you're writing for also kind of aligns with what you do, in a way, as far as their ethics and their. What do you think is the importance of guest blogging these days?
I think it's nice to do sometimes. I get a lot of invitations to do guest blogging to the point where now I have to start declining or saying I can do it, but I charge for it. But it's a great way to get your name out on another forum. I mean, it's one thing for you to have your own blog, which says, hey, I think I'm good. If you're guest posting on someone else's site, it just adds to your credibility. Someone else is saying that you're good. So that's nice. And if it's the right fit, it could be really good for your exposure. So I do appreciate the opportunity to do guest blogging, but I've had to become more selective about which opportunities I take, because that whole, I still have to make a living. Right. I like eating, so. But I do think it's fair. I think it is, a nice feather in your cap when you've blogged long enough and well enough that people want you to write for them.
And you actually have a dedicated a column in the Attorney at Work, where it's more of you're not just a guest blogger there. You actually have your own kind of a section there, which that's really good for not just your name, but also for getting traffic to your other sites.
Yes, that was very nice when they approached me and said we would like you to have a monthly column, and they're wonderful. That's kind of more of a law practice management site,
right?
And they let me stand on my soapbox once a month, and I'll pitch some ideas. And I'm like, what do you think? This might be a little too sassy, a little too bitchy, a little too angry, and they're like, no, do it. I'm like, okay, so now I just kind of write whatever and let them edit me down.
Right. No, I think it's a great. I like to read that one, and I actually have one article that they published about Twitter, so that was interesting. But they really like the edgy content, and we need to have more of these publications out there, because I think a lot of these lawyer blogs are always the same. So it's nice to have something fresh out there.
Thank you. I appreciate other professional, edgy bloggers that are putting out quality content too.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ruth, can you share with us maybe 2 or 3 tips for bloggers that could be very helpful, whether they're new bloggers or seasoned bloggers?
Sure. I think the first thing is, if you are thinking about having a blog, just make the commitment to doing it. Get a quality blog, learn how to use it, not just hire someone to run it for you, and then make the commitment. I think the best thing one of my friends did when he helped me set up my first site was said, I will not do this for you unless you commit to blogging at least once a week for at least 2 years. And that sounds like a lot, but once you get into it and you see the value of it, and you get to see how wonderful it is just to get to sit and write every week. It really is an asset, both personally and professionally. So definitely make the commitment to, if you want to do it, do it. It's annoying when people start a blog and 2 weeks later they've abandoned it. So there's that one. And then, be diligent about your legal do's and don'ts. Write your own content, be careful about images, write quality. I'm so glad they actually changed the SEO rules, because there were so many posts for a while where people were just trying to game the system for search results, and their content was crap. So now that the new way forces people to write quality, I think is fantastic.
And I totally agree with you. I think that consistency is the key to successful blogging. because like you said, we see so many of these attorney blogs that we have a post. Last one was May 2011, and we are 2014, and nothing is in there. And it's better not to write at all. I think just take it
Yeah.
down the whole thing, because
Right.
what is the message the clients see? This guy doesn't care. He doesn't know. He's not up to date.
He's not paying attention.
He's not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I look at all social media like I look at it like a telephone. It's a
Right.
tool. If you're, you got to use it. You have to respond. You have to interact. And otherwise, it's like having a telephone and never answering it when it rings.
Right, and I think blogging is one of those tools where media, they love it. A lot of whatever you do, like in our case, we had so much media coverage over the years just because of the blogs. Because sometimes you there's a news story. Just this past 2 weeks, you've probably seen the crisis at the border, the young children who are coming to the U.S. without parents. And we keep writing about this on our blog, and we they call us every day, like can you tell us about this? Can you tell us about that? And this is, there's no way you can call the reporter and say, can you interview me, please? I know what I'm talking about. Who the hell are you?
Exactly.
And
That's
when they read your
exactly
blog and they say, what, we read about your blog, and you said that, and it's kind of interesting because we never thought about this angle. So do you mind talking about us on TV? And so a lot of attorneys are complaining, well, we never have, we never get media coverage. How do we do that? I think blogging is the way. This is the only way.
Absolutely. It's how you leverage it. It's one thing to say, I know about this information versus I'm showing you I know what I'm
Exactly.
talking about.
And you're a living example of that. I mean, look at you. I mean, just Google your name and we have to change our hard drive. It just crashes. Your name keeps appearing everywhere. So I think I love it. But we talked about blogging, but I'm curious to know, what is your take on social media? So we write our blog and we have our images, but now we have Facebook, and now we have Google Plus, and Facebook has now become a tool where people actually write long posts. It's almost like mini blog posts in Facebook, more personal, more edgy, and a bit more dangerous. And I see, I'm not going to name that attorney. She's quite known in the marketing field, but she's been writing a lot of personal things about her life and other people, and it's on Facebook. And people think, well, it's on Facebook, it stays there, but it's not. What is your take on that, and how do we protect ourselves when we post on Facebook as an attorney?
So I love social media. I'm active on Facebook. I have a personal page, and the law firm has a page. I love Twitter. It's actually my preferred social media platform. I'm on YouTube. I'm on LinkedIn like everybody else. I think it's fantastic. And I think you have to think about, what am I putting out there, to whom, and why am I doing it? And what are the potential consequences of it? Because like you said, once you put something out there, you don't know where it's going to end up. So like my personal Facebook is really only meant for friends and family. And there are plenty of posts that I will tag with, friends only. So if you're not on my friends list, I didn't mean for you to read it. However, I am a huge advocate of the phrase, think before you post. I tell everybody, assume that everything you put online is going to end up on the front page of the newspaper. So even if you only meant for something to be for friends and family, you better be prepared for it to go viral and for everybody to see it. And my other kind of rule of thumb is, assume that everything that you post online is going to be seen by 4 people: your best friend, your worst enemy, your boss, and your mother. If you don't want one of them to see what you're thinking about posting, regardless of what platform or your privacy settings, assume all 4 of those people are going to see it. And if you don't want one of those people to see it, don't put it out there. And then that way, if anyone ever tries to, throw something back in your face that you thought was like a private, conversation, you can just own it. You may not be happy about it, but you can at least own it.
No, this is a great tips, and I agree with you. Some people, they just completely forget about it. And but if they think about it in that way, like, do I want them to see this post? Would I actually do it? And you're right. That's probably the best filter, because that stays there. And I think these days, and I was talking to a person that is a judge overseas, and they actually use a search on Facebook to find information when they go to court, and believe me, they find things over there. And
I'm sure.
We got to be very, very careful, because Facebook is Facebook, and it's nice to be public because it makes you feel good and you get validation. But at the same time, it can get, and especially if you're an attorney, you can lose a few things, if you are not careful, right?
Yes,
So I think those are great tips.
Thank you.
And Ruth, I wanted to, as we come to the end of our show, I would like you to share maybe a quote that resonates with you that you feel is something that you want to share with our listeners.
Okay. I want to share the quote that I actually have as my tagline on all of my emails. It is, let's see if I can say it right. Don't try to be a great man. Just be a man and let history make its own decisions.
Perfect. We'll,
So
we'll have it in our show notes as well as your book and any other links to your website. And if any of our audience would like to find you online, what's the best place to find you? You can verbally say it.
Sure. Let's see. The best places to find me online. The website is carterlawaz.com. My Twitter handle is rbcarter. And if you put in my name on Google, you'll probably find my Facebook, my LinkedIn, and everything else.
And like I said, I warn people not to search on Google too much because it's going to crash your system. Thank you so much, Ruth, for coming on our show. It was a true pleasure, and I really enjoyed it. And this is Jacob Sapochnik, enchantinglawyer.com. Thank you for listening to our podcast. If you have any questions, email me at jacob@enchantinglawyer.com. We'd love to hear your opinion, and if you have any questions, post it in the comments. And we'll see you at our next episode.